The Grim Tale of Grace Macabre, Chapter 55. Jeff's anger blazed as he headed out of the freezer. Jacob took one more look at the girl. She would have been radiant when filled with life, and as much as he tried to suppress his own anger so that he could be a much-needed counterweight to his partner's immense fury, he found that he could not justify such an action. Without a doubt in his soul, he knew that whoever had murdered this little girl was not just bad, they were evil. And he knew that there was only one way to effectively deal with evil. It had to be destroyed. He turned and followed Jeff, closing the freezer door behind him. He switched on his flashlight and stepped over to where his partner was waiting for him. "We need to make sure we're on the same page," Jeff said as he took his gun from its holster, where he had secured it while investigating Sandy's body inside the freezer. He switched off the safety. Jacob knew exactly what Jeff meant. He wanted to know that they both had the same goal: kill everyone in the building that had a hand in the murder of innocent children. "If we arrest these psychos, they'll find some slick lawyer and either get off on an insanity plea or will plead to something that keeps them off death row," Jeff said. Jacob checked the safety on his own weapon. "My only concern is that we might kill someone who isn't part of this." Jeff shot him a grim look. "That girl went missing 3 days ago, Jacob. There's no telling what terrible things they did to her and her sister during that time. Anyone we find in this place that isn't a child will be part of this slaughter, and they will deserve the righteous justice of a well-placed bullet." Jacob knew that his partner was correct. "I agree," he said, and motioned for Jeff to take the lead. He kept the beam of his flashlight low. Jeff began cautiously making his way toward the swinging door that led further into the pit. "I guess this proves one thing for sure." "What's that?" Jacob said as he fell in behind Jeff. "Ian Black is right about these people being monsters, because only a monster can kill little kids." Jacob didn't believe in supernatural monsters, and he knew that Jeff didn't either. Modern society attempted to explain man's wicked deeds as acts of misunderstood people in need of psychiatric help. But Jacob and his partner knew that this explanation did not ring true. The monsters Jeff spoke of were the human monsters who chose to give themselves over to their evil desires. Jeff took up position on the left side of the door. Jacob leaned his back against the wall on the right. Jeff peeked through the rectangular window. The soft glow lit up his face. Jacob noticed that it only served to make his eyes look like dark, lifeless sockets, and he suppressed a shiver, hoping that this was not an omen of the worst possible outcome of their siege on the monster-filled compound. Jeff glanced at Jacob and nodded. Jacob reached out and pushed open the door. Jeff stepped through, his gun up and ready. Jacob followed, his own gun raised and ready. They stepped through and found themselves in a storage room, lined with shelves full of various liquors and condiments. To their left was a door that led to a break room. Directly across from them was the entrance to the main room of the building. Jeff quickly stepped over and scanned the break room and its restroom. All was clear. He crept over to the door leading into the main room and peered through the window. Jacob could see that he paled at what he saw on the other side. His mouth fell open and his eyes shot wide. Jacob concerned to see such a reaction from his hardened partner, stepped to the door and looked out into the club. What he saw made him want to question his own sanity. Both men stood silently transfixed by the scene before them. After a long moment, they turned to look at each other, each man hoping that the other would be able to give a rational explanation to what they were seeing. But neither of them could even attempt an explanation because what they witnessed defied conventional reasoning. Jacob looked back through the small window, his mind warping at the scene before him. The main room was large, lit only with a couple dozen candles placed on stands and candelabras. The flickering flames cast writhing shadows on the walls. In the center of the room stood a long wooden table, upon which was tied Cindy Evans, dressed in a white robe. She was sobbing, tears streaming down her face. Around the table stood 6 people dressed in dark crimson robes. 5 of them wore horrifying masks that blended features of human and snake. They were chanting in some bizarre language, and there appeared to be 3 females and 3 males. The chanting was building into a dark crescendo, getting louder, more urgent, filled with lust and need. Suddenly, one of the males grabbed a handful of plum-colored powder from a bowl placed on the table and tossed it on a large candle at the victim's feet. The light quickly flared up, turning brilliant purple before dying back down to its original glow. In that moment of unearthly illumination, Detectives Jeff Martin and Jacob Quill saw something so terrible that they would both forever be changed. None of the people standing around the table, chanting over the girl, were wearing masks. The half-human, half-snake heads were real. Jacob and Jeff stood in the crypt black shadows, bearing witness to a scene so twisted that it felt disturbingly pornographic. 5 of the 6 individuals chanting around the table pulled the hoods of their cloaks back, exposing their scaly faces in the flickering candlelight. Their necks were long and thick, twice the length of a human neck, and their heads were the sleek heads of vipers. Their eyes contained slit pupils that glowed like embers. The largest male was black with crimson speckles. The smallest male was pale with brown stripes. The third had the markings of a diamondback rattlesnake and seemed to be the leader. The females were smaller and more colorful than the males. One was covered in vividly scarlet scales. Another glistened with scales so pale they seemed almost white, like she was an albino. The third female did not remove her hood, but they could see her true form. "Those are the Runaways," Jacob said with sudden recognition. "Even living in this strange town, I never could bring myself to believe that there were such things as real as monsters." Jeff couldn't respond. Over the years, he had investigated crimes that were unexplainable by using rigid natural logic. If he found himself on a case that could not be explained with normal human understanding, he refused to accept any other explanation, and in most of those situations, the cases remained open as unsolved. Looking upon the scene before him, he realized that the world around him, the world he could see, touch, feel, smell, was only half of what he thought of as a normal reality. There was a second paranormal reality that remained in the shadows, just out of sight, yet was in constant battle with every living thing, especially here in Nevermore. With this enlightenment, he wondered how many unsolved cases in Nevermore Hollows could be closed if he had only been open to this truth. Even more, how many cases in the world could have been closed. Jeff's gun hung limply at his side in a hand that was slick with fear sweat. His training and instinct screamed at him to take control of himself and to raise the gun into firing position and to protect the innocent girl tied to the large wooden table. There are times, though, when the human mind is shocked to such a degree that it not only loses the ability for rational thought, but also the ability to physically react. This was one of those situations for Jeff. His mind retreated deep into itself, desperately seeking refuge from this offensive revelation. Jacob's hand shook so badly that he was in danger of dropping his weapon. He knew that under the circumstances, with neither of them able to hold a coherent thought, any action they attempted to take would be action that could get them all killed, including the young girl on the table. Suddenly, they sensed movement behind them. Jacob turned to see what manner of mind-warping horror was sneaking up behind them, while Jeff continued to stare slack-jawed at the profane ritual playing out in the large candle-lit room. Jacob attempted to bring his gun up into a ready position so that he could fend off this new intruder. However, he was sluggish. His gun came up too slowly to be of any protection. What he saw was nothing other than a miracle. Detective Haley Madison eased through the door, her Glock held ready for action. She gave him a look that asked if he was okay. The moment their eyes met, he snapped out of his stupor. He shook his head as if clearing away a fog and snuck toward her. They were far enough back into the storage room that they could not be seen. Only the mere hint of candlelight wafted in from the main room. "What are you doing here?" he whispered. He was nearly as shocked at seeing her as he was at seeing the monsters in the other room. He couldn't believe that she had appeared exactly when they most needed backup. "I've been conducting my own personal investigation on this," she whispered. "I saw your car out front and I thought I'd see if you needed help." She looked over his shoulder at Jeff. "Is he okay?" Jacob put a steadying hand on her shoulder, not just to steady her for what she was about to see, but also because he needed her strength to steady himself. "No, I think he's snapped. I don't know if he'll be any help to us." "Why not?" Madison asked, her eyes narrowing. "You cannot imagine what is on the other side of those doors," Jacob replied. "I don't know how to describe them. You won't be able to believe what you see." Madison moved a step around him so that she could get a look beyond the window into the next room. Jacob stopped her. "Prepare yourself," he said. Madison gave him an unreadable look and crept up beside Jeff. She peered through the small window. "Damn it," she said, her tone calm and steady. Jacob found her reaction strange. Then she turned to him, the glow of the candlelight softly painting the left side of her face, and said, "Demons. I hate those things."